Hi guys, welcome to this week's Star Wars Lads weekly special. This one's going to be pretty repetitive for some of you guys if you've been checking out our YouTube Shorts, TikToks, and Instagram Reels. But if you haven't, this will be a summation of all my reactions and thoughts, and some of my thoughts post like a week or so from watching this documentary series, Light and Magic. So, Light and Magic is a Disney Plus documentary series about the creation, formation, development, advancements, and everything to do with ILM from 1975 to the present day. And, ILM started off as this very practical, kind of esoteric, very eccentric place that somehow created these massive special effects for this weird sci fi space movie called Star Wars. And now, if you talk about special effects, CGI, and everything, the best of the best comes from ILM. They've been involved in all the special effects developments of the last 50 something years. It's ridiculous, but it's also incredible to think that they've had this much staying power. And if you've been seeing a lot of the documentary series from like the prequels, some of the original trilogy, some other documentary series that were filmed during the early 2000s and whatnot, that involved people like George Lucas and John Knoll talking about the secrets of Star Wars, the development, and all that. You've already seen just how much of a role ILM had, but this series is bringing basically every key player involved in ILM then and ILM now, and can shape the future ILM moving forward. It's a very enriching experience for me personally because to see these people who use their hands, they use their mind, they use their intelligence, and were always the unsung heroes of Star Wars, finally get a full sit down for over 6 episodes. It was a great treat, pure delight. I think every episode was awesome to watch. For me, particularly, I love the first 2 episodes. It's really a two-parter. It introduces John Dykstra and his crew, like Lauren Peterson, Dennis Muren, Joe Johnston, Phil Tippett, Richard Edlin, all these massive names in special effects and a lot of their backgrounds and how they all kind of knew each other, all came to know each other and created this technology for the special effects that Star Wars needed that wasn't invented yet. And the part two is George Lucas coming back from filming at London and Pinewood and realizing they've only managed 4 effects despite working for quite a bit, but not having anything close to being ready for the film. And somehow it all pans out. Somehow they all pull it off. And I think those first 2 episodes, if you just watch those alone, if you're just here for how the original Star Wars special effects were made, it's a perfect little duology of sorts to watch. Episode 3 and 4 are more focused on the advancements in Empire and some of the advancements in Return of the Jedi, but that fourth episode is a little bit more about how change is starting to come. People are burnt out from Return of the Jedi, and that's been told in other interviews and documentaries before. But being put into the series and being able to interview these guys for every single instant that they're working, you can also see like them working through these older memories, the joy of the initial ones, the highs that still came with Empire, and the good times of Return of the Jedi, but also some of the things that they wish they could have done differently, and some things that were rejected and whatnot. So if you're just watching those first 4 episodes, I would say it's, for me personally, pretty spectacular, if not perfect documentary series. It's when we get to episode 5 and 6 that it gets a little more worrying. And episode 4, it begins with Return of the Jedi, but it's really about the blockbuster era of the 80s with special effects for Poltergeist, E.T., and we get to see a lot of people who George Lucas is friends with being allowed access to ILM, like Spielberg, and they all start to make connections and realize ILM is like the place to be. These are filmmakers in their own rights, and they're crazy, they're fun and weird, and they just love the craft. And all their movies, all these directors who come to ILM, like Robert Zemeckis and most notably James Cameron, all their movies succeed and become massive hits. And again, for the first 4 episodes, it's great. It's the fifth episode where it's a shift towards the digital age, and we do get a lot more of new generation ILM people like John Knoll, Mark DePay, Spaz Williams. Like we get to see a lot of those guys. We can't also forget the guys who are behind Pixar, because Pixar was developed with ILM. Ed Catmull and his arrival into the story, then doesn't say anything for like half an episode, and then he's leaving essentially. There's a lot of moving pieces by the time the fourth episode happens, and I mean that is what happened, so you can't blame them. And the fifth episode is really about like James Cameron with The Abyss and Terminator, seeing how those effects really helped shape the digital revolution effects and how it started kind of pushing people out of the creature shop, the model shop, and all that. It's still great if you count those first 5 episodes. It's when we get to the sixth one that I have a little bit more pause, because I think any sort of awe and perfection is lost in that sixth episode. And the sixth episode is building off this lead up into Jurassic Park, where Phil Tippett has already become this guy working fully on a stop motion masterpiece of a film, and he's got Stan Winston with the animatronics. Like this film is going to be practical but incredible. This is what Jurassic Park is going to be. And then Spaz Williams and Mark DePay are able to convince Dennis Muren that, hey, we can create this fully CGI. They convince Kathleen and Kennedy and Steven Spielberg to let them try out a test. They screen it, and bam, they're fully convinced. And the digital age comes, and it comes fast, it comes hard. That movie obviously is pioneering, groundbreaking, and you get to see some things about Mark DePay and Spaz Williams, how they were always kind of little rebels in their own ways, but they were very much in the spirit of ILM. But they did also push these guys out who were very focused on practical effects, even if they all kind of saw the end of that era was coming. These two guys who were focused on the computer graphics department kind of pushed them out the door before they could even say their own names. And it's kind of sad to see that. But I think when we reach that sixth episode, because Jurassic Park works, bam, great. We don't really see the evolution of these guys, or if do we see these older figureheads like Dennis Muren, Phil Tippett, like what happens to them moving forward. The sixth episode just becomes a compilation. We somehow just jump into Iron Man, which is 2008 with Jon Favreau, and obviously he's a big player now with The Mandalorian and just his effect on Star Wars. It's such a shock to jump past the special editions, past the prequels, even if those have been covered extensively before. Having these guys who worked at ILM, not just these big faces like George Lucas, all that talking about it was something I wanted to see. And they just don't do that. And then we don't see anything about the sequels either, which I think would have been a pretty interesting perspective, even if Disney is trying to keep most of the production and everything secret. Having a perspective on it at least would have been a great connective tissue between the prequel BTS stuff that we already have, the original BTS stuff, and the non-existence, essentially, of anything to do with the sequel BTS. Yeah, that's where it got really frustrating for me. And then somehow it jumps straight into The Mandalorian, which is like, to go from Iron Man into The Mandalorian, I understand Jon Favreau is the connective tissue there. But what about all these other guys? Like, they were all pushed away. Like, yeah, we got these cool people introduced, like Doug Chang. All the things they showed is great and cool, but it lost its charm. It lost something more special that was pervasive throughout those first 4 episodes and through most of the fifth. And then suddenly it's just gone. It feels too corporate. It feels like anything about these ragtag rebels who had this deadline, this big Death Star looming in front of him, and always managed to defeat it, always managed to explode it. Every movie in ingenious ways. That spirit is just gone. I wish we could have seen what it meant to be involved with the digital world of ILM and how that was a challenge as more and more studios became involved in computer graphics with their films and how they stayed on top of that. But we don't get that perspective from the people who work there. We only get the George Lucas perspectives of those old documentaries that are sometimes referenced here, but not entirely. So I think after having a little bit of time to think about it, the first 5 episodes are great. I loved everything about it. The sixth is where it just I wasn't too satisfied. It was nice to see a little bow on the top with everyone talking about ILM and the majesty of it and all. But make this an 8 episode series, and I think this could be one of the greatest documentary series out there ever. Instead, it's just okay of an ending, and it's still great to me. I still think it's like a 4.5 star out of 5. It's still that good, but it was on the verge of being a masterpiece documentary series, and maybe they just didn't have the budget. Maybe they were only restricted to 6 episodes, but that last episode really knocks down a lot of the goodwill from those first 5 episodes. But I don't want to end this on a negative note. I do want to recommend to all Star Wars fans, all Disney fans who watch documentaries and all that, check out Light and Magic. It is such an enriching and fun experience. These guys recorded themselves throughout these decades worth of adventures and developments and everything. It's I don't know what else to say. It's a great documentary series. Go check it out right now. You won't regret it. Thank you guys so much for watching this week's Star Wars Lad special. If you liked it, make sure to leave a like and comment down below and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We drop videos at least twice a week and a short occasionally. Last week we had a lot of shorts, but that was just because I really wanted to give my initial reactions to Light and Magic. If you haven't already, make sure to follow us on audio podcasts. If you're an audio podcast listener, you can find us on Apple Podcast, Anchor, and Spotify, as well as plenty of other podcast platforms. And if you're very interested in seeing every single update that we put out, make sure to check out every discussion and post put on our community tab on YouTube and all of our socials. You can find us on Facebook, TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram. Thank you guys again for watching. We'll see you guys next time.